Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are talking about print media, and specifically the choices you should consider when it comes time to print your photos. Now, what is print media? The simplest answer, or at least what we're going to talk about today, is fine art photo paper for making inkjet printing. Printing is daunting, and I know it. You know it, anyone who's ever spent time printing knows it, because you've taken a photo that you love, you retouched it, you got it to the point where you think it is great, and now you have to deal with a whole bunch of new variables. So today, we're gonna talk about some of the variables you should consider before you ever take that next step, the printing. Let's go. There are a few factors that you should consider right off, because that's going to set some parameters for you. Like, do you want to display it? Or do you want to put it behind glass, or do you want to leave the print exposed? Are you going to put it in a spot where it's going to have a light on it? Because that's going to affect the glare and the type of medium you want to use. How important is it for this photo to last? Do you need a bunch of longevity? Does it need to be archival? Is it going to be something that you want to show in multiple places, and you need to make sure that it's not going to scratch and dent easy? And then, most importantly, what do you want the photo to look and feel like? The type of paper you use will greatly affect the contrast, the color pop, the vibrance, the saturation, all these things. And depending on what you're looking for stylistically, you're going to need to get the right medium. The first thing we're going to talk about is finish. Finish is going to encompass the white point, the saturation, the color gamut that it all puts out. And there's a bunch of options when it comes to finish. There's luster, gloss, there's canvas, there's matte, there's textured matte. And we're just gonna run through some of those real quick. So we can start with this luster print right here. This print is great, or this type of medium is great for any time that you want to display your image, but you don't want to put it behind glass, because it already has some of the sheen and it gets a lot of the pop off just ambient lights around it. This paper is also great if you're really trying to preserve the saturation and the color detail that you have on a computer monitor. But it has some downsides. While it has that nice luster and that sheen to it, it's because it has an enamel coating on it, which makes it pretty vulnerable to scratches, fingerprints, denting, creasing. And, you know, on top of that, maybe that vibrant color isn't what you're looking for. You know, in a case like that, you probably want to switch over to something like this matte. Now, this is a textured matte, and I actually have some mattes that have no texture right here. But you can tell while looking at these guys that first and foremost, it's way less vibrant. You know, there's no sheen, no matter how I wiggle these prints around, and I have lights shining on me from all angles right now. No matter how I move these guys, we don't get a shiny reflection anywhere. And that is great if you're going to put this behind glass, if you're going to put this in a place where you're gonna have an art light, really bringing emphasis to it. But if you don't dig those muted tones, the muted contrast, you're probably never gonna love this. You know, adversely, there are other heavier mediums like canvas, or there's mediums like metallic that just give a ton of zest and pop to your colors. Maybe so much so that it even abstracts your image some. And if that's what you're going for, that is great for you. The important thing is, as always, is to stop, back up, and make those decisions. You know, and also, a glossy image, just like luster, it's gonna have a real high white point, it's gonna have the sheen. I'm hopeful that you guys can see the sheen on my overhead camera right now. But again, my contrast gets pushed up. You can really see the difference in contrast in these things. You can see how much more all my shadows get crushed down and become blacks here. It all comes down to what you want and what you're looking for. The next thing we want to talk about is weight, or the GSM of your paper. That's grams per square meter. I understand that weight might seem like it's a silly or kind of superfluous thing, but it makes a big difference. Not just in the durability of your photo. Here we have a 350 GSM ultra white paper. It is stiff as a board. It's not gonna crease. I can handle it easily. It's nice and safe. Adversely, this guy right here, which just from pinching the corner just now, I put a crease in, is 100 GSM rice paper. It is a wafer. If I hold it by one corner, I'll dent it. And I'm not sure if you can tell in our overhead camera or not, but you can literally see through this guy. You can actually see where like the binding agent in the paper is. And that is crucial to the longevity of your print. So again, you need to consider your weight because you want to make sure, one, it'll work in your printer. Two, it's gonna have the tactile feel you're looking for. And it's gonna affect how the image looks because it's going to affect how much bleed or how much the paper is able to absorb the ink. If you doubt me, this is the back of a 310 gram paper. It's just white. This is the back of a 100 gram paper, and I don't know if you guys can see it, but I can see the image. If you want your colors to have a ton of pop, or if you want to be more muted, the weight of your paper will affect that. And then finally, we get to what probably has the most visual impact, and that's the white point of your paper. This is a big deal, and it's why I can't suggest enough that when you start printing, you buy a bunch of sample packs from a bunch of different providers and print a bunch of test strips. Because what you'll see, and again, it's super obvious to everyone who's here, but all of these papers have slightly different white points. This one on top has a much warmer point, and it almost seems like it has some yellows and reds. And so it makes the skin tone feel like it has a lot more yellow pop. Adversely, something that is cool or it's a cold paper is gonna have a very stark white, almost a blue point. When it comes to the choices I make when printing, I tend to love very cold paper or things that have an incredibly high white point when I'm printing black and white because it gives my whites a much more graphic feeling and it shows more contrast in my blacks. But generally when I'm printing fine art or just the way I prefer images, I like a warmer look. I like it to mute tones a little bit. And I just think it's a nicer overall feeling. But again, that comes down to my personal choices. And I've spent the time experimenting with tons of papers that I know what I gravitate towards. And I think if you take the time and experiment with different papers and try out some of these choices that are available to you, you'll find something that works for you 90% of the time too. Okay guys, so thanks to hahnemuhle, we have these two ginormous prints up on the wall. Now, right away, I can't see my monitor, but I hope that you can see that this print that is kind of more of a luster has a bunch of sheen. There's highlights from all of our studio lights, and there's a lot more color saturation. Mike is gonna talk about how I desaturated the whole photo, but there's a lot more color in this image than this image.
Yeah, and it pains me to admit that on this particular photo, which I actually very much like from Alex, on this William Turner paper, which is matte, which I run to the hills from because I think my work needs more. But on this particular print, I prefer this to my everyday burrito. I gotta say, it looks phenomenal.
Yeah, this is a big deal because we actually argued about this off camera for quite a while yesterday.
Yeah, it looks brilliant. It looks...
You know, and I don't know if you guys can see it. One of the reasons I love a little bit more muted contrast and softer colors is if you look here in the fall off of this image, we go from this kind of tealy cyan color to a black really fast. And it's just a pretty steep, harsh fall off. But you come up to the exact same print, and as it goes from cyan and it starts going into darker tones, you get some magenta. And then, I mean, that's what, a stop more than that?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
it's a huge difference,
yeah,
right?
It's a big difference.
And you can see like the structure difference in the carpet
But
is so different.
there any black in this, Alex?
Is there any black in the image?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there. There's some black. Oh, see that right there?
Yeah.
There's
there's some black.
Maybe
Black
his socks.
Socks.
But then again, guys, that's one of the like stylistic choices. I've talked about this before. I don't want an absurd amount of contrast.
I need it.
And so for
My
me
photos
not
are
having
crap without it.
so for me not having any black is kind of standard. For Mike, it's a huge red flag. And so that's what we were saying, so that's what I've been saying this whole time. You need to decide what kind of style and feeling you want your images to have, and then print accordingly.
Yeah, beautiful. Well done.
And one last bit of advice. If you print something and you just don't know if it's there or not, print it bigger. You'll probably feel better about yourself.
Thanks, hahnemuhle.
Yeah, and thanks to you guys too. See you later.